Hey everybody, this is Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today we're talking about emotions. We're talking about all of the feelings and how to deal with the fact that you have a lot of feelings. Emotional regulation is not something that was taught very well when most of us were younger. There's a whole lot of people out there that were never taught levels of emotion and emotional regulation. So I am about to basically do a session with you, and I'm hoping you find it as helpful as other people did. We're going to talk about size of the problem. So the way we talk about this with kids is the size of the problem. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Number 5 is the biggest problems. It's a problem that you need to go to an adult and the adult is going to tell you what to do, follow all their directions, ask no questions. Things like a fire, a hurricane, an accident. Something is happening that is too big for the kids to handle. A number 4 level issue is something that is going to require conversation with an adult a couple of times. So something happening at home, a big emotion they're not able to get a hold of or to be able to regulate. That's when they would come to see a counselor or talk to their teacher a couple different times. But number 4 is something that needs to involve adult help a number of different times. A level 3 issue is you need to tell an adult and they need to help you to solve it, but it's not necessarily going to derail your entire day. A number 2 issue is something that you can take positive response to, and a number 1 issue is something you should just ignore. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the escalation of the problem. We call this size of the problem. How that applies to adults is this way. It's the same thing. So while you don't necessarily need to find an adult to follow in some of those circumstances, this applies very clearly to how adults should handle issues. So now we're going to take a problem that could easily be a problem that other adults could have, and we're going to sort of apply all of these size of the problem options to it to see what the size of the problem actually is. You have a dear friend, not a family member, but somebody you've been friends with for a year or more, and you do not see eye to eye on a particular situation, whatever that is. You don't see eye to eye on it. When you apply size of the problem to something, it's really important to identify what the problem is. In most of these situations, the problem is that you don't see eye to eye. What we infer into that is very different, like they are rigid or you are too sensitive, whatever. Those are things that we assign to the problem. Those are not the actual problem. The problem is you don't see eye to eye on something. So number 1, is it something that you can ignore? Is it something that if you ignore it, it will have a negative impact on your life? If you can ignore it, then it's something that you ignore and you kind of put to the side and you move forward. If it's something you can't ignore, you attempt to have a conversation with the person about it. So when you have the conversation, it has to be calm, non-judgmental. Use things like I statements. Say things like, I feel blank when this happens, and then offer a solution. Offer not necessarily you changing your mind or them changing their mind, but offer an option to get to a place where you can agree again, or at the very least respect each other's differences. That's a level 2. A level 3 is that sort of sticky ground where you have to get someone else involved. And it's easy when we're talking about kids to say, get an adult involved, because that is how you're supposed to do things, right? You find a trusted adult and you have them help you to do this. But when you are the adult involved, it's a little harder. That is where I would suggest seeking the advice of a trusted friend who does see eye to eye with you. It's even better if you can find somebody who also knows the other person and kind of has a stake in both of you. It really does need to be somebody that you trust. And the reason that that's significant is because it needs to be somebody who is going to not encourage you to put your feelings to the side for the sake of peace. That does not actually serve anyone. That doesn't help anybody. And that's actually a fairly toxic kind of a mindset. If you don't have somebody that you feel safe being emotionally vulnerable to so that you can work through some of your feelings, you need to find somebody, because that is going to make all of the difference in your ability to really judge the reality of the issue. So number 3, you're going to then talk to somebody who is a safe person to sort of get their perspective on it. The theory behind number 3 is you're going outside of yourself in order to gain wisdom about the situation. If you're a child, you're going to an adult. If you are an adult, you're going to another adult who is able to help you to sort of work through these things. Then you go to 4, those are problems that I suggest you go to a trained professional. If you're having the same conversation over and over and over again with this trusted friend about this other friend, there's more going on than just the issue of not seeing eye to eye, because not seeing eye to eye, that problem should not be a derailing problem. There are options for how to not let it derail you. But if it becomes a derailing problem, there's something else going on. Either the importance that you've put on this friendship, the importance you've put on being right, the importance you've put on the issue which you disagree in. These are not incorrect things. Working through why it's so hard to then either let this friend go or walk away from the thing is what you need to work through. So if it's not resolving itself when you talk to a trusted friend, that's when I do encourage that you bring a professional in. Bring in somebody who you can talk to a couple of times and really kind of work through that, figure out the meanings that you're assigning to things and how to do what's best for you in that situation. And then number 5, that's when it has become catastrophic. That's when we're talking about safety being in jeopardy and where it really does become no other option but to cut this off. If your safety is in jeopardy, you need to get out of a situation where you're not physically safe or emotionally safe. You owe nobody anything. You do not owe them understanding and your time and your energy if they are not willing to help you become emotionally safe. So that's the size of the problem. And it's understanding the scale of it. When I'm at a base level of emotional functioning, if someone says something I don't agree with, it would be, for me, an inappropriate response to just cut them off completely. For me, at my baseline. For someone else at their baseline, that may be what they need to do. So they need to be able to do that. If that's where you're at, you need to feel empowered to do that, because not doing so leads to other issues. There is a fair amount of research that says having a well-rounded sphere of influence around you, having people from different mindsets and different backgrounds, makes you a more well-rounded person. Where this gets complicated is times like now. We're not at a base level 0 where we've been dealing with a pandemic for months upon end, when we are feeling isolated and in danger a fair amount of the time, emotionally or physically. When those kind of things are happening, you're not coming in at a base level 0. And so even something at a level 1 is escalated. It feels bigger. And you're then reacting to it from your elevated emotional stance. Now, the reason that's problematic is because the person you're reacting to might not be at the elevated emotional standpoint that you're at. So they're going to see it as an inappropriate or out of balance reaction. That's not your problem. That's not your problem. Your obligation is to yourself and those you have a responsibility to care for, whether that is a chosen group of friends, a family that you have made, or your family of origin, whatever it is, that group of people that you say, these are my people, these are my responsibility. You have to do what's best in those situations to protect those people and those relationships and yourself. Even if you are elevated and responding to what should be a 1 or a 2, and ignore it or talk about it, and you're responding to it as though it's a 4 or a 5, you do not have to explain where you are. You don't owe that to anybody. What we do have to understand is that when we respond to something and someone does not agree with our response, we are currently at a place where they feel like they have the ability and the right, and sometimes even the obligation, to call out your response. That is where you need to say, I'm out of engaging in this. That's size of the problem. When you have a problem, identify what the problem is, not what you assume it is, not the meaning that you're assigning to the problem or the person you have the problem with, but what is the actual problem? And then, is it a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? That will help you to regulate how to respond to it and how much time and energy to give said problem. I hope you have a good week, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.